Christ the healer. Healing. Who here has needed healing? But when we say healing, what does healing mean to us? Is it a physical illness? Is it a spiritual illness? Like, someone give me an example, nothing too personal, but it could be a loved one that's either sick, passed away. It could be a particular sin that we're struggling with, or it could be, I don't know, maybe maybe a decision that we're expecting that we didn't get, or yeah, you guys relate to that?
Emotional.
Emotional. So it probably covers soul, mind, body, and spirit. Safe to say? We all agree? Yeah. It's actually really interesting, and I'm not sure if you've ever picked this up, and I hadn't prior to preparing the talk. But the fourth Sunday of Thout, so Thout is the first Coptic month of the Coptic New Year. The fourth Sunday, which is the 2nd of October this year, I mean it obviously varies, is a very interesting Sunday. Now, all of you guys seem pretty diligent, and I take it, when we come to liturgy on a Sunday, we all obviously read the scriptures before we come, right? We all understand that when we read the Gospels from the Vespers, the Gospel from the Matins, and the Gospel and the liturgy, they're not haphazard, are they? They're all actually delivering a very similar message, right? They're all very, very well connected, okay? And the church is actually illustrating through the Gospels a message for us. And this particular Sunday is actually very relevant to your topic, okay? So in Vespers, it takes us to Matthew chapter 9. And just for the purpose of this talk, Mark seems to elaborate on that story a little bit more, so I've chosen just to focus on Mark, but it's the same gospel. It talks about Jairus' daughter, who was the ruler, who approached Christ and said, you know, my daughter is really ill. And also the woman who had a flow of blood that just wanted to touch the hem of his garment. We go to Matins, the Gentile woman who shows her faith, the amazing Gentile woman. The Gospel, one of my favourite Gospels, to be honest, the sinful woman, okay, who goes directly into Simon's house, the Pharisee, with everybody there, breaks the alabaster flask of oil on Jesus' feet. So this is a Sunday that's actually full of healing. Would you agree? Jairus' daughter, the woman with the flow of blood, who needed healing, and the simple woman. But it's interesting today, and I've touched on it already. So the readings of today will present to us not Christ the judge, not Christ the shepherd, not Christ the king, and not Christ the saviour. Okay? What does it present to us?
Christ the healer.
Okay. So if we go through the Gospels very, very quickly, Mark 5, now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by sea, and behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, my little daughter lies at the point of death. Come lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live. With such confidence, mind you. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years, and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she had heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I should be made well. Imagine that crowd. Imagine Jesus at that time, doing miracles, everybody following him. You've got a lady who's on the ground crawling, just saying to herself, only I can touch his garment. Immediately the fount of blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that the power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, who touched my clothes? But his disciples said to him, you see the multitude thronging you, and you say, who touched me? And he looked around to her who'd done this thing. The woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. So essentially, the woman was healed. Okay. Now we continue where this passage first started. While he was still speaking, some came from the rulers of the synagogue's house, who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid, only believe." And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James and John, and the brother James. And he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult, and those who wept and wailed loudly. And when he came in, he said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. And he put them all outside, and took the father and mother of the child and those who were with him, and entered where the child was lying. Then he took the child by hand and said to her, "Talitha cumi," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately they rose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were all overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and he said something that should be given to eat. We go on to Vespers in Matthew 15. Then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from the region and cried out to him, saying, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David, my daughter is severely demon-possessed." Okay. Canaan, just a bit of context, being Gentile, okay? Non-Jewish. But he answered her not a word. Okay. So actually, as I go through this, I really love this passage. Just imagine it, right? You've gone up to Jesus and you've said, "O Lord, son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter's demon-possessed." And Jesus ignores you. I don't know about you, but that would be enough for me to, okay, thanks, I tried. And his disciples came to him and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she cries out after us." If Jesus ignoring her wasn't enough, the disciples are saying, "Send her away." Alright? But he then answered and said, "I was not sent except for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Okay? Then she came and worshipped him, saying, "Lord, help me." And he answered and said to her, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." So first, Jesus ignores her. Then she's continuing with the disciples saying, "Tell her to go away." Then Jesus is basically saying, well, it's not good to take the children's bread for the Jews and give it to the little dogs, being the Gentiles. And she said, "Yes, Lord, even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." And then Jesus said, "O woman, great is your faith, let it be to you as you desire." And her daughter was healed in that very hour. The final one, the sinful woman. And one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought in an alabaster flask of fragrant oil and stood at his feet behind him weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears and wipe them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with fragrant oil. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, "This man, had he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is, who is touching him, for she is a sinner." And Jesus answered and said to him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." So he said, "Teacher, say it." There was a certain creditor who had two debtors, one owed 500 denarii and the other 50. And when they had nothing which to repay, he freely forgave them both. "Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him more?" Simon answered and said, "I suppose the one who he forgave more." And he said to him, "You have rightly judged." Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house, you gave me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet since the time I came in. You did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrant oil. Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little." And he said to her, "Your sins are forgiven." And those who sat at the table with him began to say to themselves, "Who is this who even forgives sins?" And he said to them, "Your faith has saved you, go in peace." Beautiful story. Again, another side reflection which I heard in a sermon once, which I really, really loved. This part here, where it says, "Do you see this woman?" Do you know the word woman that Jesus used there? It's actually the same word that he used to describe his mother, St. Mary. So you can imagine, I guess, just the context of the environment. When he said woman to this lady, he was actually elevating her to quite a respectable position by using the same term that he used his mother. Just in a word, and I'm sure that would have just sent a few shockwaves through the household just at that point. That's how loving Jesus is. You come to him as a complete sinner and he elevates you immediately. It's beautiful. Okay. So Christ the healer. So when we reflect on these four instances, everyone that Christ touched was healed. Right? So let's go through it. We had the woman with the flow of blood. Tick. She was healed. Darius' daughter. Tick. She was healed. The sinful woman. Tick. And the Gentile woman's demon-possessed daughter. Tick. That's a good gospel, isn't it? That's a really nice day. Really well done, right? Am I hiding anything? Let's look into this picture a little bit more. So the sinful woman. So this is the gospel of Sunday. In this story, somebody wasn't healed. Who wasn't healed in this story?
Pharisee.
Yeah. It's like a mugshot. You know those mugshots you get? I tried to make it look like he was mugshot. He's not smiling either. Simon the Pharisee wasn't healed. Okay? The only one in that whole day, and the beautiful reflection on that fourth Sunday of Thout, we focus on this such a blessed, all these blessed Gospels where everybody's healed and we rejoice with that. But unfortunately, it's not a day to celebrate, but it's a day to mourn. Because we have one brethren of ours that's not healed, we all suffer as a congregation, right? And unfortunately on this day, Simon wasn't healed. And now when the Pharisee who invited him saw this, he spoke to himself saying, this man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. So what's he doing? He's judging the woman, isn't he? Right? And sometimes, guys, I mean, the reality is, that can often be the case with us. Simon didn't realise he was needing healing. And you know what's really ironic, but it's actually quite amusing here. Because we know Simon needed healing for what? Judgment, right? And Jesus answered and said to him, so tell me, Simon, therefore, which of them will love him more? So Simon answers and said, I suppose the one whom he forgave more. And what did Jesus say to him? You have rightly judged. As if to say, Simon, I'm telling you what you need of healing. You're a judge. We spoke about faith. But I would argue, right, I want to give Simon the benefit of the doubt here, right? I think Simon had faith. And it might be similar to the level of faith that we have. Because Simon obviously probably saw the miracles that Jesus had performed. He invited him into his house. You know, he recognised him as a prophet. As we see himself, well, if he's a prophet, you know, he must know who this manner of woman, this teacher, this lady is. And he calls him teacher. So, you know, giving Simon the benefit of the doubt, I think he had a level of faith. But when we look at the other's faith, okay, the woman with the flow of blood, then when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I will be made well. Okay, Darius. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue, because he was a ruler of the synagogue. It's not a small thing. Darius by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly. Okay, ruler of the synagogue, very prominent in society, fell at the feet of Jesus and begged him. Okay, the sinful woman. And behold, a woman in the city who was a sinner, when she knew that she sat at the table of the Pharisee's house. I just still can't go beyond. I mean, can you imagine a scene? Maybe, I don't know, imagine the Holy Synod, right? And Pope Theodorus comes down, you've got all the bishops, and they're all sitting in Donvale. You've got all the men in black there. And then suddenly, an equivalent of a sinful woman from wherever just barges in. And that doesn't even do it justice. You just can't imagine, how could you even contemplate to actually even enter the house, let alone enter the house and sit at his feet? It's remarkable the courage that she had, and the faith that she had. And the Gentile woman. But he answered and said to her, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And we've gone through that multiple times. She was rejected. Okay? So what's specifically about faith though? Because this faith term is a really big general term. We need to be very, very specific here. There's something about the faith of the different groups. Now, we said Simon the Pharisee had faith. I think if you ask Simon the Pharisee, can Jesus heal? Yeah, Jesus can heal. I'm sure he saw it happen all the time. Yeah, Jesus is a healer. But if you ask the others, they were actually desperate. And their view is that only Jesus can heal. Do you see the difference? Yes, Jesus can heal. Only Jesus can heal. And this word desperate, I've really been thinking about it the last few days, and it's quite dramatic actually when you start to overlay your spiritual life. The desperation that these four characters that they did when they were pursuing Jesus. Okay? Desperate faith. What does desperate faith mean? How do we relate to what a desperate faith is? You know what it's like? It's like an emergency call. If somebody in front of you has a heart attack, you're not going to book them a medical appointment on Tuesday, are you? Let me just ring the clinic and doctor, you've got maybe a 9 a.m. because like an early appointment next week because he's just had a heart attack. Or would you pick up the phone and 000 ambulance, you need to be here 5 minutes ago? Right? Yeah. Is our faith like that? No? Desperate faith in our lives. So we think about our prayers, and this is where it really got to me actually when I was really, really reflecting on this. Our prayers, our Bible readings, our church attendance, our fasting. How desperate are we when we approach those services and those practices? Is it, let's turn up to church, don't want to get there too early because, it's a bit of sleeping on a Sunday. I want to catch the gospel, and then hopefully just leave a little bit early and go to the coffee shop. Or in our prayers, let's read a couple of psalms and just sort of be done with it, just so we can go out and do whatever we need to do. Or our fasting, we become very legalistic about our fasting and we'll break our fast a little bit early. Is that a desperate approach? What are your thoughts here? Have you ever actually, again, prior to this, I actually really thought about the term desperation. And I was contemplating this in my quiet time, and I thought to myself, I was standing there, I was praying, and I thought, do you know what, God, it's very hard for me to stand before you and tell you that I'm going to do something, because suddenly I'm trying to empower myself. We've always got to rely on God to sort of lead us. And I thought to myself, well, what can I do? And I realised the only thing I can do is be very desperate about what I want to do, or be very desperate about what He's asking me to do. And if I have the desperation, as we saw in the 4 stories, God will do the rest. You ever thought about it that way? I can stand there and I can say, God, listen, I'm going to read the Holy Bible from now on. I'm going to do that. But I felt that wasn't the right way to do it. I'd rather say, God, I'm going to be desperate around praying the Bible. And I want you to take me through the journey. I want to show the desperation. What do you think? Which one do you think God would appreciate more? We're going to be very desperate with my fasting. Because I value you so much. Because I know you're the only one. I'm going to apply that desperation to you. There's a really important point here though. It's not what, it's how. Okay? What do I mean by that? It's not what, it's how. There's a really nice reflection. So, you know the story with the widow and 2 mites? Okay, just very quickly. Jesus sat opposite the treasury and saw how the people put money into the treasury. Isn't that interesting? You ever sort of reflect on that? He wasn't looking at how much they put in there. He was looking at how they put them in, not what they put in. He wasn't counting what was going in. In our spiritual journeys, if we start, and going back to what we mentioned before, if we apply this how, right, this desperate how do I approach my prayers? Okay? How do I approach my Bible readings? Am I desperate? How do I approach my church attendance? How do I approach my fasting? Because I think what we've learnt today, guys, and hopefully what we've reflected on, is that Jesus is our healer, and he can heal our mind, body, soul, spirit. And as we saw in those 4 examples, though, we need to take that desperate approach. It's how we approach Christ. If we're approaching like Simon the Pharisee, who, got faith, he knows he's got a bit of faith, he invites him in. And you know what's remarkable about all of them? The other 4 instances, they have to struggle to even go to Jesus. One was touching the hem of his garment, the other one was, begging him earnestly. Yet with Simon, Jesus went into his house to dine with him. How embarrassing is that? We come to church every day. Well, not every day, hopefully we come every day, but every Sunday at least, or you guys come 2-3 times a week. How are we approaching Christ? So it's something for us to think about just for the remainder of life. If we can insert this desperation into our spiritual journeys, I think we're pray to God for the healing. I think we'll have a much better success rate. And a beautiful psalm, Psalm 63 verse 1, it's in the first hour of prayers. It's always a nice one to reflect on. Oh God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. So if we could actually start living that psalm, just always have that in our minds, it'll be a really beautiful, beautiful day, beautiful remainder of Lent. And that's it.